McKinney was where the spiders were. In the backyard, there was a hole where a tree had once been, a deep rotting pocket, a dried Texas clay that didn't just hold dirt, it held a heap of them. They were a dark, writhing mound of hairy legs and bodies that made the earth look like it was breathing. I avoided that part of the yard as much as I could. I didn't want to see the ground crawl, and I didn't want to be near the hollow where they huddled together in that heavy, silent pile. It felt like the earth had a secret, a dark, pulsing weight that stayed tucked away in the rot. But staying away from the yard didn't make the house feel safe. It seemed like the haunting had followed us there, settling into the bones of the building until the walls themselves felt restless. Weird things happened from time to time. Objects would suddenly throw themselves off the walls as if pushed by an unseen hand, and the lights would flicker on and off without anyone touching a switch. You could walk through a room and hit a pocket of air so cold it felt like ice, a single spot where the temperature dropped while the rest of the house remained sweltering in the Texas heat. As time went on, I began to notice a pattern in the chaos. The phenomena around the house usually flared up during fights. When my mom was badly overwhelmed or when us kids would throw hissy fits, that's when the walls seemed to react. Whenever my dad noticed these things happening, he didn't see it as a haunting. He'd blame my mom. Every time something flew or a shadow moved, he'd claim the disturbances were only happening because of her craft. That was the atmosphere where the nightmare started. I had been having odd dreams, but these ones were different. They always began with the music box notes, a thin mechanical winding that got inside my ears while I was sleeping. It was a signal that he was coming. He didn't walk through the door. He unfolded himself through the bedroom window, a creature of long, skeletal limbs and fingers like dry sticks. He moved unnaturally, like a shadow, stretching across a wall, silent, deliberate. He wore a hat, a tall, stiff top hat that made his silhouette look even more jagged and wrong as he loomed over me. I would feel the mattress sink under his weight as he climbed up. He didn't bite. He started at my toes and began to take me in, his throat stretching open like a dry, leathery sleeve. It was a suffocating sensation of a snake swallowing a rat. I could feel the squeeze of him around my ankles, then my knees, and then my waist, pulling me down into his stomach. There was no air, only the dry pressure of his skin and teeth. I would thrash, try to scream, my heart hitting my ribs until I finally woke up, sweaty, shaking, the phantom pressure of his throat still clinging to my skin. The terror eventually spilled out of my sleep into the afternoon. One day when the sun was high and hot, my mom was laying us all down for a nap. The blinds were closed, but the light forced its way in, drawing straight white ribs across the carpet and walls. We were all there on my bed, my siblings and me, settling into the quiet of the room. And something moved across the window. It wasn't a flicker of a bird or a tree branch outside. It was a deliberate, solid shape that slid across the window, stopped right in the center. It was a shade. A silhouette in a top hat, standing stiff and black, his outline perfectly traced by the sunlight filtering through the plastic slats. It felt intimidating, cold, like it was staring in through the gaps, and like it had a purpose for being there. It didn't move, it just existed, in the void cutting through the light, watching us. I recognized him and screamed, my voice breaking as I pointed at the blinds, terrified because the shade from my dreams, the man in the top hat, was standing right there in the daylight. My siblings began to cry with me, their eyes locked on the same spot. My mom kept looking from my terrified face back to the window, her own expression shifting as she realized we were all tracking the same shape. She saw the shadow too. She felt it, a heavy, cold weight that didn't belong in the room. Finally, she yelled out for it to leave as she walked over and thrust the blinds open. There was no one there. The yard was empty and baking in the heat. The shade was gone, but the fear was so thick that my mom didn't just walk away. She smudged the house with incense, the smoke curling into the corners where the shadows liked to hide, and she laid down lines of salt at every door, every window. I remember watching her that night in the yard through my window, laying salt down around our house in a line. She was trying to keep it out, trying to reclaim the space that the music box had claimed. Things calmed down after she smudged the house. The restless energy that had been throwing things from the walls seemed to settle, and for the first time the rooms felt like they belonged to us again. Most importantly, the nightmares began to fade. I stopped having them as much, the mechanical whining of the music box finally going quiet as if the salt lines had finally cut the connection. Looking back as an adult, memories of that house carry a weight that logic couldn't fully strip away. I see my mother differently in that memory now. I see a woman standing between her children in a darkness that had become too solid to ignore. While my dad saw only the chaos and called her a witch or blamed her craft, he was actually the one holding the line. The last dream I ever had of the man in the hat was different. There was no suffocating swallow, no rhythmic mechanical winding of the music box in my ears. He wasn't hovering over the bed anymore. He was exactly where he belonged, on the other side of the glass. I watched him from the shadows of my bed sheets, his face pressed so hard against the pane that his features seemed to warp in response to the words. His mouth was a wide, screaming terror, a jagged, fixed expression of hunger that never left his hollow eyes. His movements weren't silent or deliberate anymore. They were frantic. I watched those long, skeletal fingers against the glass begin to scrape and claw at the window frame. The sound was horrific. A high-pitched screech of bone against wood, a desperate, rhythmic scratching as he tried to find a crack or weakness. An invitation was no longer there. He thrashed against the barrier, his silhouette bucking against the white ribs of the blinds. His entire focus narrowed down to that single locked latch, trying to claw his way back in. I haven't seen him since, but sometimes in the quiet of the night, I hear the faint winding of a music box, and just for a second, beneath the hum of the air conditioner, and I check the window.